everyone. Welcome to 2020 Design Trends by UXPin. My name is Katarzyna Kempa and I'm with marketing team here at UXPin. And I'd like to tell you a few words about the whole project. Because this year, unlike all the years previously, we decided to not just publish an ebook of design trends for the upcoming year, but to give the voice to as many designers as we can to start the discussion. So throughout whole February, we're going to publish like very short, very casual, very funny, sometimes interviews with amazing designers that share what they think is going to be trending in 2020. And this is just like a start of the discussion. We'd like to share to learn as much as we can from the whole community. So please feel free to comment, to add your insights, your expertise, your experience. Just join the discussion and share what you think is going to be trending in 2020. Welcome, Grace. We're going to talk a little bit about design trends for 2020. I'm happy to welcome you in our interview, our short interview. Mm-hmm. So first of all, I'd like you to tell us a bit about yourself.
Yeah, so my name is Grace Brewer. So I lead a small design team at a medium-sized healthcare IT company that's based out of Kansas City. Our team just started about 4 years ago. Whenever I started was kind of whenever we first got kicked off. So it's been really exciting to see the company become more design mature. And so we, as far as our tool set, utilize UXPin. Obviously, we are very big fans of UXPin. We've spoken on behalf before because we just find the tool really user-friendly and just extremely powerful for what we need to do, particularly for designing healthcare software. And then as far as usability testing, we use some other tools, Murray for tracking metrics, which is really important for what our team does, and then additionally Validately for moderated user testing. Since in our field, it can be really hard to get face-to-face with our users since, we're working with those in
healthcare. Yeah, okay. Because you work for healthcare industry, I would like to ask you how the practice of inclusive design and accessibility will grow in 2020, in your opinion, because I assume that this is important to you, right?
Yes, definitely. I think being in healthcare software, we need to think about that more so than a lot of other sectors. But I think the great thing about that trend in general is that I think we're understanding how it applies to so many different types of technology. I think that overall designers are having more of an eye on it, even for things that we might not have necessarily associated accessibility with. So for us, of course, it's important, especially because we get checked for our regulatorily, as far as, are we meeting these standards? We can be certified of, meeting certain levels of the standard and things like that. So it's been top of mind for us for quite a few years now, but I do think it's just going to become more and more common amongst those in other sectors as well, which I think is really exciting.
Mm-hmm. Well, I've just read, like a couple of days ago that this sentence, which made me thinking, it was, when is the time when the companies won't measure how many disabled people are using their app, because if only one person uses your app, you should be thinking about accessibility, right?
Yeah, and I think it kind of goes to more of just a change in mindset. I think if you go into it with the mentality of like, okay, we have to account for, these 20 people who maybe have this sort of disability versus these 20 people who are maybe different in another way, then you're always going to end up kind of excluding someone or just, not doing it quote unquote right. I think it's more just being creative in the way that you actually build your software in a way that just allows for people who have different needs to be able to actually use it in a good way. And so it's not necessarily as, okay, yep, here's this group of people and here's this group of people. It's more just that you can actually think of it in a more inclusive way overall of how can people who might have different backgrounds different. And it doesn't even have to be disabilities, of course. There's lots of things that can lead to inclusive design and people just needing to approach software differently. But, what are all the ways that we can think of it in just a more holistic way?
Mm-hmm. Do you think that 2020 is going to be the year that people are going to think holistically about that?
Oh goodness. I mean, I think it's so hard to say that because every company also moves at a different speed. I think we've seen that obviously for even just things like design maturity. I think even if you look at today, there's so many different companies that are on so many different levels. So I think like anything, it'll take time for different groups. Some will move more quickly toward that than others, but hopefully it'll be a year that gets a lot more traction for it.
Yeah. I think there's more and more designers advocating for accessibility, for example, you. So I guess, the trend is going to be pretty huge in 2020. I hope, fingers crossed, right? Okay, so my next question to you would be minimalism or maximalism, because I can see that there are, like just two versions of design, and like two sides of the trend. Which party would you consider yourself in?
Goodness. I don't know. Once again, I think it's kind of hard because it just depends on the market that you're in. I think, some types of software, some types of designers can get away with like a little bit more. I think for being in healthcare, we don't get to try as many of like the hot new trends and things like that because one, they move in and out very quickly and healthcare software would not be able to keep up with that. But then also, we are utility people come into our software needing to get a job done. So I think for us, that's not as much of a question just because, we are a little bit more on the minimalism. The more straightforward that we can make it, that's really us doing our jobs well. Because, we're not trying to compete in a market of, oh, you want to download our app versus the other app, and it's just a really easy switch. We are more in the market of, we know that our users typically don't have a choice in the matter because they're the ones who work at the hospitals. The hospital's the one buying the software, but we want to make sure that they enjoy that. So the simpler we can make it for them is usually the route that we have to take.
Okay, yeah. So it's not for, like about Marie Kondo and does it spark joy to you, but about ability, right?
Sorry, you cut off for a second there. What was that?
So I said that it's not whether it sparks joy, like Marie Kondo said, but it's about usability, the minimalism
Oh, yes, exactly.
industry, right?
Yeah, and to that point, I think, the people who do have more consumer-facing apps, I think it can be, like you said, very joyous and very happy inducing for users to actually be able to see a minimalist design sometimes. But, there's always a place for both routes.
Exactly. Okay, so my next question to you would be because I assume that you are aware that Pantone said that classic blue is the 2020 color, but do you think that there will be another color that will be the new black of 2020?
I don't know. It's always hard to compete with blue. Obviously, if you look at the amount of logos that are blue, it is always something that's very accessible to a lot of people. There's a lot of the psychology behind that. That blue is something that's calming to people. So I don't have any particular one in mind, but there's always something that comes out of left field. Obviously, when material design happened, nobody expected that pink was going to be the hot new thing, but
Yeah. Well, there's this whole psychology of colors, right? And blue is connected with, like um intellectual sphere, etc. So I think that's why blue is connected with tech industry. But as you said, you never know.
yeah.
Okay. Um, What is your favorite emerging trend in your field of design and industry? So, I mean, healthcare, obviously, but also you are a UX designer, if I remember correctly. So, just please share anything that pops to your mind. What would be what you would be, like the most excited about to watch in 2020?
Yeah, so something that I find particularly exciting is just the fact that I think the lines between business and design are becoming a little bit fuzzy, in a very good way. I think that obviously in recent years there's been a lot of teaching business leaders about design. There's been, design thinking and things like that, trying to democratize design and make it more accessible to people. But I think I'm really excited for a little bit going the other way of designers actually getting more involved with the business decisions and kind of understanding a little bit more of that side, which just aligns with my passions because I also just find the way that business is run to be very interesting. But I do think it is something that is becoming more prevalent because for so many years now, as designers, we've kind of been like, oh, we really want a seat at the table. That's kind of a very common phrase. And I think that really we need to make sure that once we do get that seat at the table, we really understand what that means, and kind of switching from this mindset of, okay, what does the design team need? Because for so long we were really having to fight for just getting resources on design teams, but kind of switching that mentality to what does the business need and how can the design team help?
Yeah, exactly. Because usually designers are, considered artistic souls who wouldn't even know anything about business, right? And there are strict rules, to how to design stuff, especially apps, to bring you like business value, right?
Yeah, no, I completely agree. I think for so many years it was really easy to just, like you said, kind of write us off as creative idealists. I think there's been a lot of trends that have helped that. I think big data and more focus on the user research part has helped people understand, like, hey, we're not just making these decisions because we think they look pretty. But yeah, I think the next step of that will be us being able to speak the language as far as how businesses are run and things like that, so that we can also understand how what we're doing fits into a bigger business strategy.
Mm-hmm. So you think design thinking is one of the ways to develop this kind of thinking in the whole company, and not just.
Yeah, I think so. So it's funny, just recently for the past few weeks, my team actually does like a weekly UX research time just for like continued learning. And for the past several weeks, I've just been reading design thinking articles and kind of reading the ones that are for design thinking and reading the ones that are against design thinking. And it's really interesting because I think there's definitely arguments on both sides of the spectrum. I think like anything, it can be used incorrectly and it can kind of be used to say like we're really design mature when really they aren't, and they're not actually using it in a very design mature way. But I think there's also times where it can really help spread the word and it can really help people understand a little bit more of kind of, hey, we need to not just make decisions to make decisions. We need to validate these assumptions. We need to iterate. So I think like anything, of course, there's a good and a bad way to apply it. But I think generally helping people better understand design and understand the value that it provides is a good thing.
Yeah, sure. I agree completely. So my last question, I guess, to you would be, what are your professional goals for 2020? Are you, like following some kind of trend, or are you going against it? What are your New Year's resolutions?
Yeah, I think mine, like I said, I kind of have a passion for the way businesses are run. So I think mine is just, like I said, really kind of learning more of that business side. So I already listened to some business podcasts, but I think within my own company, especially now that I lead a team and things like that, I want to start being a little bit more proactive of maybe going after those business conversations and trying to have more understanding, really making it known throughout the company, like, hey, maybe I want to be listening in for this so that I can learn a little bit more about it. So I think that's a big one. Not to be like I'm trying to do a plug here, but I'm very excited to see what UXPin has to offer in 2020, because we honestly, within my team, every time you guys release a new feature, we're always like, oh, did you see what they did? Did you see how it does this? So we always find that to be a really great part of our year as well.
Thank you very much. Yeah, we have a few amazing things coming up in 2020. So I'm going to make sure you're one of the first ones. Maybe like a beta version or something like that.
Well, we would definitely take that.
That's so cool. Yeah, we have some big news coming up in 2020. So I'm really glad that you're waiting for them.
Oh, great.
Okay, so thank you, Grace. Thank you very much. We've discussed trends, amazing trends coming up in 2020. And thank you.
All right, great. Yeah, I hope you enjoy your 2020 as well.
Thank you very much.